Hello everybody, Ben Coley here. A little bit of another hour of fun and talking about the Constitution and the global problems that we have today and what can be done to solve them. As you know, I like to talk about the Constitution a lot and our main freedoms, which seem to be, not seem to be, but are being eroded away. They're being infringed upon little by little. Law by law. We have laws being enacted that are infringing on your Second Amendment right to purchase and to own and to actually bear arms by taking away the ammunition, by taking away people's rights to own a weapon, and while simultaneously we see the police department increasing their armament as if they're fighting some kind of dastardly war against some unseen enemy. And this sort of brings back memories of the war on drugs, so to speak, where you've got this philosophy that somebody might put some kind of a chemical in their mouth, or they may take some kind of a chemical that may make their body feel better, which, by the way, they have a right to pursue happiness. So I don't think you could talk to anybody who is smoking marijuana. By the way, I'm not an advocate of smoking marijuana, but I do believe if you want to smoke it, it's entirely up to you. If you want to take cocaine or any other kind of drug, it's entirely up to you, because your body belongs to you. And the whole war on drugs thing seems to be a failure. I just don't see where we have won anything. I mean, what in the world, if you go back 30-40 years, I don't know how many years it's been since this war on drugs started, but what exactly has been accomplished? I mean, let's add it up. We have more people in jail here in the United States than anywhere else in the world. Now, what's that tell you? Does that mean that the people in the United States are the most heinous people in the world? Does it mean that the people in the United States are evil or bad in some way? Worse so than, say, other countries where the government sort of looks the other way if somebody decides to smoke opium or pot or take cocaine or mix up a batch of some kind of God knows what chemicals and take it and most likely injure, damage, or kill themselves? You have to ask yourself, with a war on drugs and the government presumably the root of this saying, well, we know that these drugs are bad for you and therefore we're going to make a law against it, while the people are saying, well, even if they're bad for us, they may make me feel better. Like smoking, for example. Let's say smoking hasn't been banned. It's been banned in public places so that the smoke doesn't drift from a person who wants to smoke to a person who breathes it in forcibly because he's in the same room, and then therefore he can't go into a public place because someone else is smoking. I understand that, because now you're hoisting that smoke onto someone that doesn't want to smoke. And believe me, I worked in a couple of places on a temporary basis where people were smoking and I didn't smoke, and I just sat there and breathed it in, didn't really like it. I'm sure it didn't help me, but I wouldn't want to stop those people from smoking. Half of them are dead now, and they were younger than me when the whole thing started. But the point is, if you say that drugs are illegal, and then the reasoning behind that, which I know what you're going to say because they're bad for you. I mean, you see these commercials, this is your brain on drugs, and you see an egg cooking. But on the other hand, you allow people to do dangerous things such as, well, let's sign you up and we're going to send you off to war, and by the way, here's your gun, and don't forget now, when you get where you're going, the enemy's going to be shooting back at you with guns that are just as powerful. You know, I guess they forget to tell the soldiers that, the young kids, when they sign them up. They say you're going to go into battle and you're going to do what's right for the country, and half the time they put you in some place where the people on the ground that you're fighting don't even know why you're there or what the hell's going on. and then they order you to shoot people that may not fully understand what's going on, and they end up trying to defend themselves, so they pick up a gun to defend themselves. It's no different than the black fella yesterday who in North Carolina was pulled over for a traffic stop and ended up getting tased. He wasn't armed or anything, but the police asked him to get out of his car. Well, if he was stopped at a traffic stop and he was speeding or something, he should have been issued a ticket. I don't even know why they would have asked him to get out of his car. I mean, the police are just asking, it's almost like they're trying to have a confrontation. Then the guy, I guess the police officer must have said something to him that frightened him, so he ran, being a black boy, and the police officer being a white guy. Not that that really should matter, it shouldn't, but of late it seems that does seem to matter. So the boy runs. Now at that point the police officer has got the man's driver's license. He pulled over the car so they know the license plate number. They could always circle back around a week later and pick the kid up for not stopping. I mean, they don't have to capture him that moment, do they? I mean, it's a routine traffic stop. So that tells me he wasn't really doing anything all that serious, but they frightened him enough that he ran for his life. And what did the police do? They shot him with a gun in the back and killed him. They shot him in the back. Oh, and they just didn't shoot him once, they shot him 8 times. Wanted to make sure he was dead. Well, at least North Carolina did the right thing, and they charged the police officer with murder, which is what in my prior videos you see, you violate somebody's constitutional rights and you are going down. Especially if you're a public servant. You're not a public official, you're a public servant. And that man, if he was speeding or ran a stop sign or did some kind of motor vehicle infraction, or his license was expired or whatever, for whatever reason, there is no place in the face of this earth, or the face of this earth, where that would deserve a death sentence by a police officer without any kind of a trial. I mean, the worst that should have happened there was he should have been given a ticket and then cut loose. And if he didn't show up in court, then they could arrest him for contempt because he didn't show up in court. But like I said, North Carolina's did the right thing. I appreciate the governor making sure that this police officer is in fact charged with murder. Now, the point is, getting back to the topic here, what exactly is were the Founding Fathers thinking when they said you have the right to pursue happiness? Pursuit of happiness. I mean, they had to really be thinking deeply when they wrote the Constitution, because they thought of all the things that they wanted when they ran away and escaped from Great Britain and decided to declare independence. They thought of all the things bad that happened to them as the tyrannical government of England was coming down on them and telling them they had to do this, they have to do that, have to do this, and they said, none of this, we want to be left alone. And I think that that's a human right. I don't think that that's a territorial right. It shouldn't be a national right. It shouldn't be a right of half of the earth but not the other half of the earth. It should be a right that everybody's born with, but the Founding Fathers saw it fit to put it into the Constitution that you have a right to pursue happiness. Now, the right to pursue happiness, if you think about it, at the top of that food chain of happiness would be, well, your brain. It's the brain that is what determines whether the rest of you are happy. It's not necessarily your neighbor saying that you're happy. It's not your doctor that's saying you're happy. It's not your lawyer that's saying you're happy. It's your brain telling your soul, yes, I'm happy. Or your body feeling good and telling your brain, yes, I'm happy. It's a synergy between the mind, heart, and the soul, and it's all within the person, and it's within the body. And the body belongs to you. Now, we have a recent court decision that says that no one is allowed to patent any part of your body. No one owns your body. Now, if no one owns your body, no one can tell you what to put into your body. or what parts that you can take out of your body, but no one is allowed to own your body or patent it. That's slavery. Now, if someone says, well, you can't put something in your body that makes you happy, then you're clearly violating the right to pursue happiness. Because if I like to eat walnuts, and walnuts make me feel happy, then I'm eating walnuts to pursue happiness. If I thought that walnuts tasted bitter, and I didn't want to eat them because every time I ate a walnut it would make me go, I don't like walnuts, I don't want to eat walnuts. Well, then I would make a decision not to eat walnuts, and I would look around for maybe something else to eat. Maybe I'd like to eat an apple. So what is the difference between God Almighty, whether you believe in Jesus or you don't believe in Jesus and you believe that there's just a God, or you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, you believe that the universe was just created somehow out of whatever and there's no supreme being? It doesn't matter. The point is, a human being is a sentient being. In other words, a person can make up his own mind about his surroundings, about his condition, his overall condition. That's why when you're sick and you go to the hospital and you're laying there on the gurney and the doctor comes in, he says, well, what's the matter with you? How do you feel? Well, you report how you feel. Well, I feel like my chest hurts, or I feel that I have a cold, or I just feel tired and I can't move. And you're reporting to the doctor, and it's the doctor's job to make you feel better and diagnose the problem. So what's the difference between a person who likes to eat walnuts versus a person who likes to eat apples? And then why is it, and who gave the government the God power to say, well, you're not allowed to eat a walnut, or you're not allowed to smoke marijuana, or you're not allowed to smoke opium, or you're not allowed to take crack or cocaine or something because it doesn't make you feel good? Well, I take the opposite approach. I say, well, it might make you feel good, and maybe afterwards it might make you feel down. I mean, to me, everything tends to say, water tends to seek its own level. If you put too much water in a bucket, it's going to overflow and it's going to spill out. So maybe if you were to take too many drugs and feel good one day, you might have a down day the next day because your mind becomes used to the drug, and then so afterwards your body sort of punishes you by having it down. And you hear this from people who take drugs all the time. They say, well, I drank alcohol and I had a buzz and I felt really good. I drank alcohol, but then the next day, I had a headache and I felt sick, and I may even have been nauseous and threw up. And so, but that person may, 6 months later, he may go to a party and he may drink the same thing, saying, well, the high that he experiences while he's drunk may be worth the down that he experiences afterwards in the form of a headache or being nauseous or not feeling well for a couple of days because he was drunk. But the human being knows what the up is versus the down, and he votes within his own mind, heart, and soul, between his body, his mind, and his heart. He makes a conscious decision, knowing full well what the ramifications are if he's an adult. Now, if he's a child, probably shouldn't have the right to make these kind of decisions. But as an adult, especially an informed adult, he would have the knowledge that, well, with any up, there's probably going to be a down, or it may shorten your life. And people who smoke, let me give you an example. People who smoke cigarettes, we know now that smoking cigarettes are bad for your health. Now, if you go back 40 years, you saw on TV they had Camel commercials, and they had Marlboro. They had the Marlboro Man. Remember him? If you're old as me, you remember the Marlboro Man riding on the horse, and he was a cowboy, and he was lighting up a Marlboro cigarette like, he's so lucky that he has his horse and an open range to ride on, and he's got a job to do, round up his cattle so that he can have plenty of beef to sell and make a lot of money, and he's smoking his Marlboro cigarette while he he lived a shorter life. But he chose to have the feeling that when he inhaled that cigarette, he momentarily got a buzz from it, or I don't know what happens because I never smoked a cigarette, but well, I coughed one time back in kindergarten when everybody started smoking. Back when I was in school, everybody started smoking in first, second, or third grade. And I remember that when I was with my little gaggle of kids, somebody had snuck a cigarette out of one of their parents' handbag or something, and they passed it around. Everybody was taking a hit. And when I tried it, I choked and coughed, and that was it. I never smoked a cigarette again because I said, this is ridiculous. It makes me cough, and it doesn't seem like it's good for me. So you see, my mind said to me, and my body said, I reject this because it's not good for me. Now, if I had made a decision to smoke the cigarette, then my life would be shortened to the extent that, well, I'm 60 years old now, and I could still come here on TV and talk to you about things, and I'm not out of breath, and I can tell you that smoking is not good for you, and believe me, you're better off not smoking. So to me, the up, which I never saw what the up was, because I never could hold a smoke in my mouth long enough to, my lungs long enough to figure out what the hell the up was. I just choked over the thing. But assuming I had felt a buzz or a high off of it, it's possible that my mind may have made a decision that, okay, this is going to make me choke, but I feel relaxed from breathing that in, and that's how I want my body to feel, or I feel stimulated somehow. And even if someone were to approach me and say, look, if you smoke that cigarette, you're going to live 10 years less, I might have made a decision, which is my life, especially if I'm an adult, to say, okay, I will forego the 10 years and I will want to live 10 years less, be less of a drain on Social Security. You'd think the government would want you to live less because you wouldn't have to pay as much Social Security. Of course, now they say they want to kill 90% of the world's population, but of course they won't officially say that. They'll just build these Georgia Guidestones and let them stand without taking them down. So it's almost like it's in your face. But the bottom line I'm trying to get to here is the Founding Fathers, when they said the right to pursue happiness, they were talking about the individual. They were talking about the individual's mind, heart, and soul, what's inside. That's what makes you happy, and that's what you could do. For example, another example, some people may say, oh, at night I want to sleep on a waterbed, and I want the waterbed temperature to be 101 degrees. And the doctor might say, well, having a waterbed temperature at 101 degrees is not good for your body because it increases your blood pressure, and you should set the waterbed temperature at 98 degrees. And I say, well, screw you. I like the waterbed warm. But the government has no business telling you what temperature to keep your waterbed or your house, or how many blankets to put on you, or whether you should use Egyptian cotton sheets or regular cotton sheets, or whether you even should have any blankets at all. And then while at the same time I can get in my car right now and drive no more than 20 or 30 miles to an airport down the road here that takes tourists on airplane joyrides, and additionally they have a whole separate business that teaches you how to parachute out of an airplane. So I'm not allowed to smoke marijuana, which I don't want to smoke, so I don't give a damn about that, but I voted for it because Florida, we just had a referendum, and even though I don't want to smoke pot, I don't think that it should be illegal for other people to, if they want to smoke pot. So I voted for it, even though I'm personally, I don't want to do it, but I wouldn't want to stop anybody. But I'm allowed to jump out of an airplane. Now, what's more dangerous, smoking a joint or jumping out of an airplane? So, I mean, why doesn't the government stop people from jumping out of an airplane? How about scuba diving? I go scuba diving a lot. And we have tables and charts and computers. And why do we have that? Because it's so dangerous that if you go down 80 feet or 90 feet or 100 feet and you stay down here too long and then you come up, you could get the bends and die. I mean, that's how dangerous it is. You will die if you don't know the proper way of doing it. Just like jumping out of an airplane. If you don't know what you're supposed to do, you'll die. But the government, nevertheless, that to them, that's a sporting event. What's the difference between a dangerous sporting event and smoking a joint? I mean, you're clearly putting your body at tremendous risk when you scuba dive. You're clearly putting your body at tremendous risk when you jump out of an airplane. You're clearly putting your body at risk when you drive an automobile. I mean, how many people get killed in car accidents? And now, with the food being radioactive from Fukushima, you know, all food in the United States now has an increased level of background radiation. And I know you don't want to talk about it. And frankly, you know, you could talk about it till you're blue in the face, but there's not a lot you can do about it. So I suppose, you know, my brother-in-law is a medical doctor and an oncologist, and he works for a major pharmaceutical company. He worked in a hospital for 20 years, cancer specialist. And he said that he was at a meeting recently where they were talking about the theory that, well, if everybody is susceptible to getting cancer, and they know it, then should they tell everybody that your increased risk of cancer is 20%? And we talked about this over a whole 1-hour pizza dinner about 6 months ago. And he said that they had all the scientists had come to the conclusion that it would be better not to tell the person, the subject, that he's at a 20% greater risk of cancer. Now I have to think that he's an expert. He's at a conference, and this occurred in Maine somewhere, but they had a big summer conference and they were talking about this, and they had made a decision amongst science experts of the world that it would be better not to tell everybody that you're at a 20% increased risk of cancer. Now we didn't get into, well, does that mean 20% increase of dying 10 years earlier, 5 years earlier? Or he just said 20% increase of getting cancer, that if any individual were to come into the hospital and they were to know it, that they wouldn't tell them. And pretty much it's an unwritten philosophy amongst the doctors that it's better for the person not to know. Now see, I don't believe that. I think that if you know that you're at a higher risk of developing cancer, well then maybe you need to live your life a different way. Maybe instead of trying to save up your money on a big 401k program that you know for sure you're not going to ever be able to use, maybe it would be better just to spend the money and go on vacations around the world because you know you're going to die soon. But then he said, yeah, but the thing is, it's not sure. We don't know for sure if the guy's going to die or not. We just know that his risk might be that he'll outlive all of us, but he does have a statistically higher risk. Just like me. Now, I was irradiated by Fukushima and by what I think is a nuclear power plant to the point where my TSH level went all the way up over 10. And the hospital couldn't believe it. I thought I was having a heart attack, but it turned out to be that my thyroid got irradiated by radioactive iodine infused enough into my thyroid. And because I didn't take my potassium iodide pills, which my government failed to deliver to me, even though they knew I was at danger, I have to take these pills now because my thyroid went dead. And it's not a different part of my body. It was diagnosed as the only thing that it could have done it was radioactivity, radioactive iodine. Now, if you get radioactive iodine in you, doing the research and me having enough college physics to know, you can't just get a dose of radioactive iodine without collecting the other daughters of radioactivity as well, which don't have short half-lives. Like the radioactive iodine has a short half-life, but then there are other forms of radioactive iodine that have a longer half-life. Well, they gave me a gigantic injection and they killed my thyroid and stopped any thyroid cancer from coming, and now I have to take these pills because my thyroid cells have all been killed by the injection they gave me. It was a huge injection of iodine. I had to stay away from everybody for a couple of months because I was so radioactive. But that can't be good. The point is, why shouldn't somebody like me be able to take opium, or to take marijuana, or to take whatever? I mean, you know, at some point you have to say, okay, this something bad happened to me, but I don't see where my government was willing to tell me that something bad was coming down the road and they weren't willing to help me. So this is where I have problems with FEMA. You know, I saw what happened in New Orleans. I went to New Orleans. I wasn't there when it was happening, but I was there post-Katrina, and I was there post-Katrina close enough to see the damage right after the storm happened, and to see what happened. I looked at the stadium, I looked at the levees, and I mean, the place was just a wreck. Now, the government was stopping people from running away. So not only didn't they tell people, not only didn't they help people, which they did help some people, but they actually stopped people from leaving. Now, I don't know why they would stop people from leaving if they know that the area is going to submerge. You would think that they would at least give people free transit. See, I think they violated their civil rights. But they imposed martial law, and that cancels out the civil rights, which brings me to my next issue. This whole Jade Helm operation is going to be kicking off any moment now, where you have Stryker vehicles, Army tanks, choppers coming in with Marines, and you've got these watercraft vehicles that hover, the big new hovercrafts they have that they can carry tanks and troops, and they're going to be coming up onto the beaches of California and God knows where else in the United States, because they want to quote-unquote practice. I mean, what are they practicing for? What, you know, when the convoy of U.S. vehicles was going through Europe, what happened? Oh, we had the Lufthansa plane got shot down. Oh, they say the pilot went crazy, and well, that's funny. He went crazy right when all the U.S. high-tech vehicles were underneath the aircraft flight path. See, I think the thing was shot down because they heard rumblings up in the sky before it actually hit the ground. Some of the witnesses. So I think that there was, you know, where's the radar data? Where's the satellite data? Where's the satellite data on MH17? It went down in the Donbass region. The U.S. had a satellite, according to Vladimir Putin, parked in space. Vladimir Putin is proven to be not a liar. He's been proven to be an honest man. He says what he means, and he does what he says, and he says what he means. And he produced some satellite imagery that shows that Kiev was flying 2 of its fighter jets and were trailing the MH17 flight. But getting off the subject here, but getting back to this, people have the right to pursue happiness. A pursuit of happiness might be, for example, someone who may want to work more than 40 hours a week. He may be what they call a workaholic. Well, they don't have any rule against a workaholic. A guy might want to work 50 hours a week, even though his doctor might say, you can't work 50 hours a week, it's dangerous. Disability may be withheld from someone who makes a Social Security disability claim because he can't work, but then they say, well, you can go back to work, when they know that that guy trying to work is just injuring himself more, and that he should be given disability. Or someone who is not disabled may choose to work in a business that he owns 50, 60, 70 hours a week. He may work 24 hours a day and be on call to the point where his body has a heart attack at the age of 50 or at the age of 45. So is that man pursuing happiness? Well, in his mind, he's trying to build up a business that's supposedly going to earn him enough money, compensation, to compensate him for his risk that he's taking by working. Just like the guy who smokes cigarettes. Now, he's smoking cigarettes because he's being compensated by the fact that he enjoys the temporary high that he gets in return for the loss of life he's going to have later on. Maybe he figures when he gets older his body's going to break down anyway, and he doesn't want to live under those conditions where he's in a wheelchair. So maybe he wants to live now, enjoy his freedom, inhale cigarettes, and have a temporary high. So the government's coming in and saying, no, you're not allowed to do anything to give yourself a feeling of pursuit of happiness if it's going to harm you in the long run. In other words, they're saying we want you to live as long as possible, and we're here to make sure you live as long as possible. But it's all doublespeak, because we have proof now that the airlines are dumping and aircraft are dumping nanoparticles on us that are nothing but toxins. They've been examined under a microscope. They're man-made. Now, what's that all about? How about these flocks of birds that are flying along, and then just all of a sudden 5,000 of them drop dead out of the sky all at the same time? I mean, that can't be from some kind of a disease. It had to be, and even if you shot them with a shotgun, they wouldn't necessarily drop out of the sky so fast as all of them dropping together. They had to run into something that was so toxic that it just, one or two breaths of the bird's nose, and this toxin circulated through their body and stopped their heart, or killed the signal that's sending the heart, the message from the brain to the heart to beat, and killed them. And it's funny how the scientists can never seem to come up with an answer. But after talking to my brother-in-law, the way he says, well, if we know that something is going to kill you, but it's not a sure thing, it's only a 20% thing, so the population will be culled, so to speak. We're not going to tell you. So if you leave the hospital and they say, oh, you're okay, and they pat you on the back and say, have a nice life, and they diagnosed you with something wrong with your leg or something wrong with your heart, but they give you medicine, they say, have a nice life, but they don't tell you you have a 20% chance of dying 10 years sooner or 20 years sooner. Well, I mean, if they can do that, then what right do they have to say you can't smoke marijuana? And then if you do or get caught with it, then they want to put you in jail and take away your right to vote. And they make money doing it. I mean, this is totally ridiculous. And they're making money on it. I have no problem with people making money doing things, but making money by keeping other people in jail, which is taking away their right to freedom, that's taking away their pursuit of happiness, no doubt. Putting them in jail and shooting them is taking away their pursuit of happiness, because now you're injuring or killing them. See, I'd like to know whose big idea was to teach the police that they need to shoot these people who are running away, elderly people who are protesting. You have the right under the Constitution to protest. I mean, if you can't protest, then you can't express to the government your anger, or that you're unhappy and with the status quo, and that you want changes. You should have a right to assemble. You should have a right to pursue happiness, which includes eating nails if that's what you want, eating glass. I mean, there's no way that you can stop people from taking drugs, because they could get drugs anywhere, and there's no way you're going to be able to. You might catch somebody once in a while, but you're only going to catch one person out of 100 taking drugs. And the Founding Fathers intended for people to be able to drink, smoke cigarettes, smoke Cuban cigars. I mean, why can't we import a Cuban cigar? I mean, what the hell did Cuba ever do to us besides hosting the Russian ballistics weapons over there on their island, that now that we can't buy or visit Cuba? They're not hosting Soviet military now. They probably are now. We done pissed them off so bad now. We don't have the power to stop the Russians anymore. We pissed them off so much that they're hip to our crap, and they're like, look, we're not going to face the United States face to face because it's a mutual assured destruction, and if we start a war, nukes might flying, and that will kill both of us. So China and Russia have banded together now, and they're just going about the world's business to the exclusion of us. It's like a who's in club and who's out club. And the United States is out. We're out because we're not following our own Constitution. And not only that, but we're sticking it in their face. And by putting sanctions on Russia, such as, we're not going to sell you food, or you can't stop a superpower like Russia by saying you can't have food. They're going to just go buy food from somebody who's willing to sell it to them. We can't police the world. We've got 1,000 troops here, 100 troops here, 1,000 troops there. What's that going to do when the shit really hits the fan? You mean we're going to control the whole Earth when the whole Earth is against us? In World War II, we had most of the Earth was on our side. That's why we were able to beat the Chinese and the Germans back. The Germans and the Japanese back. I mean, if we didn't have the rest of the world on our side, if they didn't allow us bases in England, our bombers wouldn't have been able to bomb Berlin. The Germans would have just gone about their business of attacking Russia. Their submarines would have been landing in the United States. Their ships would have been coming across the ocean. But because the rest of the world was on our side, we were able to win the war. People don't want war anymore because everybody's connected with the internet now, and all disagreements can be settled through trade and can be settled through the internet. But see, the internet is bypassing the oligarchs, and that's what they don't like. They feel like they're losing control. And that's why they want to regulate the internet, which is a violation of the free speech. See, the Founding Fathers knew that free speech was very important. So to say you can't speak freely unless we put you in a cage, or you have to be in a certain area to have free speech. You have free speech everywhere. Everywhere you go, including on the internet. If you have the ability to transmit to a lot of people what you think, the other people can either listen to you or they can shut you off. If I were an oligarch and I said, listen to me and do what I say, and the reason you have to listen to me and do what I say is because I have more money than you, everybody's going to say, F you. If you have more money than me, I don't even want to talk to you because you're pissing me off. I want somebody who's like me, who is poor, who knows what it's like to be poor, who knows what it's like to have a hard time paying their water bill, have a hard time paying their electric bill, and barely has enough money to live. That's really what the fate is of most people on the planet Earth now. And then you've got the 1% of the population that's at the top, and they're controlling 99% of the wealth. You can't have that, folks. You have to have a very large middle class. And a middle class doesn't mean you have to be, making $50 or $60 or $100,000 a year. If the cost of the goods weren't controlled by monopolistic oligarchs, the cost of the goods that the people need to live every day would be so low that most people would be able to move up into the middle class. But see, I don't think that the government wants a lot of people to be in the middle class because they only want a few people to vote. You notice a lot of times when they have these funny referendums, like they want to raise the school tax a half a point, they do it on a weird day, and they don't announce it to anybody, and the only people that show up are the school teachers, and they vote themselves a raise because nobody else knows that they're about to raise your sales tax. And I think that the IRS should be done away with, because not necessarily because you have to pay taxes to them, and I'm not against that. What I'm against is that when you fill the form in, it asks, what do you do for a living? I don't think they should even ask you that. What are your expenses? What are your deductions? And by the time you get done answering all those questions, you pretty much have told them your whole life story. And that's an invasion of privacy. So on the basis of invading your privacy alone, I think that the IRS is off base. I think there should be just a flat tax. It should be a sales tax because all the stores are already set up to collect a sales tax. And so now instead of collecting state sales tax, they could collect another couple of pennies for the federal government or whatever it has to be, even if it's got to be 10% or 20% or whatever it's got to be. But then when they change it, it's going to be higher. Now you're going to ask, wait a minute, what about poor people who can't afford to pay and don't pay any income tax at all? Well, they would be getting a little green card or a pink card, and that card would be, they would be reviewed every year, and they would get that card, and then they'd show that card to the cashier, and the cash register would not charge them the federal part of the sales tax. So you see, this could work, and then you could eliminate the entire IRS, which to me, more so than it being a tax, that it being an invasion of privacy, I disagree with it. And also with the NSA. I mean, it's not the government's business who you're talking to on the telephone or what you're saying. It's none of their business. And why would they think that it is their business? Well, think about it for a minute. It's all about control. They want to control the population. The government is not in the business of controlling the population. They're supposed to be in the business of helping the people overcome problems that they can't overcome on their own. For example, when Hurricane Katrina hit, that was a major disaster. But they did not organize to the extent that they should have to fix the problem. They actually made it worse by showing up. They'd be better off if they'd have just stayed away. They'd have been better off if they stayed away. Now, then the local police. The local police, 2/3 of them ran away because they went home to protect their family because they had a gun, and so they ran home to protect their families, but they didn't protect the people. We need to vote out all the people who are in power who are continuously violating our constitutional rights that were given to us by the Founding Fathers, which are not removable. They're inalienable. That means that they're built into your genes. You can't change them. You can't remove them. Do not vote for anyone who is in power today, because you're going to get more of the same. One bad apple and the oligarch is going to come in the back door, pay everybody off, and then you're going to have the same thing again. Anyone who's a congressman who wants to run for president? No. Congressman wants to run again? No. Senator wants to run again? No. We have enough people without jobs today who are very smart, who know what the Constitution says, who are oath keepers, that can run for government and run for office. And the way you run for office is that you get a petition signed, and once you get a certain number of petitions signed, then I think that should be it. And it shouldn't have to be millions. I think that you should have a chance to have quite a few people on the ballot. It shouldn't be a choice between a bad person and a worse person, or a worse person and an even worse person. Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. That whole philosophy needs to be done away with. And the whole money system needs to be changed around as well. See, I don't have any problem with there being a QE, but I don't think that the QE, see, it's who you give the quantitative easing money to that is a problem. If you have a quantitative easing and then the money is given to the people who created the problem, you're making them oligarchs, and then they don't have to in turn reciprocate by transferring that money down to people who actually own the businesses that are having trouble getting through a rough patch. And then those businesses collapse. I mean, the whole system is designed to keep the oligarchs in power and give them even more power. So, in my view, I would enact a quantitative easing, but the quantitative easing would go straight through the SBA and it would go straight down into the small businesses, and I would make a tremendous effort to track down people who during the 2007 and 8 collapse were in business for years and then were denied credit when the businesses started to collapse and go down, and I would prop them back up as it was when things were doing well, and then I would fund them. And even if those loans went bad, that money would be spent into the economy and it would provide jobs. It would be better than just giving it to rich people who run away to other countries. And there would be no way that I would have a fat cat rule where you're going to take money away from anybody who has money in the bank, who already earned it and put it in the bank. I would make sure there was a quantitative easing. I would go after the people who were already in business. I would track them down, and I would send mentors to their home, and I would talk them into reopening their business, and I would lend them money at 0% interest with a 35-year or a 40-year term. And I would lend them like 10 times more money than they need to make sure that they make it over the long term. And if many of those people are going to say, screw this, I just don't want to go in business anymore. There are too many laws, and But we're going to change all that. We're going back to the Constitution. And anyone who violates the Constitution, you're going to have a mandatory sentence of jail, 10 years in prison. You violate somebody's privacy, 10 years in prison. You violate somebody's right to seizure of property, 10 years in prison. Anything you do to violate their constitutional rights that they were born with, it's going to be at least 10 years in prison. Now, if a private citizen does it against another private citizen, maybe be a year or something like that. But if a government official does it, or a servant rather, against the people, it's going to be a mandatory 10-year jail term. And I think the size of government needs to go way down. We don't need any Department of Education. It hasn't made our kids any smarter. Not one little bit. And I encourage the President of China and the President of Russia to give me a call, and I promise you we will have peace negotiations, and there will be no atomic war or any kind of war of any type between our people. The people of the United States need help. They're sick. They've been fluoridated in their water. It's funny, they can't smoke a marijuana cigarette, but they put poisonous fluoride in their water, and they bomb them from the sky from high altitude with poisons and toxins. The people in the United States are sick. They're very sick, and they're being ruled by oligarchs, and they're being lied to. It's legal for the government right now to lie to the people, and the people don't even know this. The people who watch the mainstream television and don't investigate on their own, they do not know that the government is legally allowed to lie to them right on the television every day. They lied to them by not telling them what's going on around the world. And they lied to them directly by saying the economy is doing better than it is. We need to have a quantitative easing, and the money needs to go only and straight to the businesses. And firstly, to the businesses that were open in 2007 and 8 and 2005, and those people that were denied credit at a moment when they needed it the most. They're the ones that were the reason that we had the economic collapse, the boom and the bubble bust. The bubble burst because those businesses were not able to get credit. Therefore, to rectify that, you need to go back and give them the credit they were promised in the first place, because the banks were supposed to be there to help them during a rough patch, not to deny them during a rough patch. They were there to collect money during the time when they were doing good, but when a rough patch came, the banks weren't there to help prop them up. That's wrong. That's where the banks are supposed to be there to smooth the bubble from forming, and they're supposed to help when a bubble forms and it bursts. They're supposed to be there to keep the economy on an even keel. But no, then when they finally did quantitative ease, they gave the money to the governmental servants, and all the governmental servants still have jobs, but the people who have businesses all went under. Now, how are we supposed to pay the governmental servants? They all need to be terminated because they don't have any tax base anymore because they let the businesses go under. Okay. Mr. Putin, I want to thank you for your service to humanity, and you're helping Greece out, and as far as I'm concerned, the people in Ukraine voted to be Russian, and as far as I'm concerned, I will not interfere with that. Or if the people of any other country or any other part of the world want to become Russian or Chinese or whatever they want to be, I will make it a I promise you I will not interfere. I understand the United States has made some grievous mistakes around the world, and we have done more harm than good to the peoples around the world. And I just think that, I apologize on behalf of the people, but it's not the people of this country, it's the government has gone running amok, and they do not represent the people, and the people do not know what our government is doing. So please don't blame the people. Please do not attack or bomb our cities. People do not know what they're doing at the government level. They're going to be shocked and horrified when this Jade Helm thing rolls out and they see tanks on their streets and helicopters flying over their head. I don't know why they're doing that, but it seems to me like they're getting ready to do something bad to us. And if I were in charge, I would cancel that whole thing immediately. I'll not allow our military to run through our cities. That's completely ridiculous. Good luck. God bless you. Take care. And as far as I'm concerned, you have the right to pursue happiness. Drugs are legal as far as I'm concerned. All drugs. and free speech. Free speech, right to pursue happiness, and that counts drugs. All legal. And thank you.